The desert is not silent. It speaks through the whisper of dry winds, through grains of sand rolling endlessly across ancient stone, and through the stillness of monuments that have witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Among these, none captures the imagination more powerfully than the Great Sphinx of Giza. Stretching nearly 73 meters from paw to tail and standing over 20 meters in height, the figure crouches on the Giza plateau like a guardian frozen in eternal watch. Its face, human yet strangely abstract, stares toward the east where the sun rises each day, as though greeting the dawn of eternity itself. For centuries, its gaze has unsettled travelers, mystics, scientists, and storytellers alike. It is both a riddle and a revelation carved into limestone, an enigma that resists easy answers. When the first explorers from distant lands approached the Sphinx in antiquity, much of its body was already swallowed by sand. What they saw was a massive head rising above the dunes, a head with features that seemed to blend kingly authority with something beyond human. Ancient Greek historians described it as a marvel, though they did not fully understand its origins. To later Arab chroniclers, it was an object of mystery, and sometimes even suspicion, as though it concealed knowledge deliberately hidden by long-vanished priests. By the 19th century, European adventurers, armed with shovels, ropes, and the beginnings of systematic archaeology, began clearing the sands to reveal the Sphinx's full form. They were astonished to find not a freestanding sculpture assembled piece by piece, but a vast body carved directly from the bedrock of the plateau, its sheer size defying all expectations of ancient craftsmanship. The symbolic power of the Sphinx is impossible to overstate. The fusion of a lion's body with a human head was not a random artistic choice, but a deliberate statement of authority. The lion embodied unstoppable force, the wild power of nature that no mortal could overcome. The human face, believed by most scholars to represent Pharaoh Khafre, linked that natural might with royal divinity. Together they formed a guardian image, a figure both earthly and celestial, declaring that the plateau with its pyramids and temples was under divine protection. Even now, as the stone is weathered by 4,500 years of desert winds, that symbolism has not lost its weight. One does not simply see the Sphinx, one feels it, as though in its silent endurance it speaks across the gulf of ages. Yet the fascination is not confined to art or religion. The Sphinx seems to radiate mystery on a deeper level. Its eroded features invite speculation. Was the nose deliberately destroyed, or did time itself erase it? Were the smooth paws shaped for ceremonial purpose, or do they hide something beneath? For explorers of every era, from Greek travelers to modern geologists, the Sphinx has been more than a statue. It has been a gateway to questions about human history itself. Did its builders intend it as a warning, a promise, or a puzzle? Could its bulk conceal hidden passages or chambers, places where priests once walked and stored their knowledge? Or is the real mystery not what lies beneath, but why such a colossal guardian was made at all? The truth is layered, like the strata of stone from which the Sphinx is carved. Archaeology has revealed much, but each revelation opens new uncertainties. What we know for certain is that the monument was created during Egypt's Old Kingdom, around the reign of Khafre in the middle of the 3rd millennium, before the Common Era. Yet debates rage about whether signs of erosion suggest it may be older still. Scientific methods, from geological surveys to radar scans, have been deployed to probe its secrets, but the image of the Sphinx always seems to retreat into the mist of speculation. Like a riddle, it answers only with silence, forcing us to weigh myth against measurement. For the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx may have represented eternal guardianship. For modern minds, it has come to represent the tension between fact and mystery. Each generation projects its own fears and hopes upon its stone visage. Mystics claim it hides records of lost civilizations. Scientists measure its layers of rock for clues about rainfall and desert winds. Artists paint it, poets describe it, filmmakers use it as a backdrop for tales of lost knowledge. It stands as one of humanity's most enduring symbols of the unknown. To explore the Sphinx is to walk into a narrative that has been unfolding for millennia. Every detail of its construction, every erosion mark, every story told about it becomes part of the greater tapestry. To stand before, it is to feel time itself pressing against your skin. The pyramids may dazzle with their geometry, but the Sphinx unsettles with its silence. It is not simply a monument, but an enigma carved in stone, a question asked by people long gone, still awaiting an answer. And so, we begin. To find the secrets hidden beneath the Sphinx, we must dig not only into the sands of Giza, but into the history of human imagination. We must trace the hands of its builders, the myths of its worshippers, the measurements of scientists, and the dreams of those who believe it guards something more than stone. The journey ahead is one that moves between certainty and speculation, between the harsh light of evidence and the shadows of legend. The Sphinx demands nothing less. To uncover its secrets, we must first return to the time when the desert was not silent but alive with voices, when rulers commanded armies of workers to shape the eternal plateau, when stone itself was transformed into symbols of divine kingship. Only then can we begin to see how the Sphinx came into being, not as a timeless riddle, but as a monument rooted in the very hands and minds of ancient Egypt. The world of the Old Kingdom of Egypt was a place where religion, politics, and architecture were inseparable. To understand how the Sphinx came to crouch upon the Giza Plateau, we must immerse ourselves in the reign of Khafre, a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty who ruled more than 4,500 years ago. His was a time of monumental ambition, when stone was not simply stone but a vessel of eternity. Pharaohs commanded thousands of workers, artisans, and engineers to transform limestone quarries into temples and pyramids that were meant to outlast the very cycles of the Sunday. The Sphinx, carved not built, was one of the most daring expressions of this vision. Instead of dragging blocks into place as they did with the pyramids, the builders shaped the living bedrock of the plateau itself into a form that fused human thought and natural mass. The Sphinx is not an addition to the land, it is a subtraction, a revelation of a figure that already lay within the limestone until the hands of laborers freed it. Imagine the scene. The quarry echoes with the sound of copper chisels striking stone. Dust rises in clouds, coating the skin of workers. Overseers walk the trenches with measured pace, shouting commands that are carried by the hot desert wind. Slowly, day after day, the lion's body emerges from the bedrock, paws extending forward, haunches sloping back, tail curling around its side. Then comes the shaping of the head, carefully carved to bear the likeness of the king, though softened by centuries of erosion. This was not merely labor, it was ritual. Each strike of the chisel was part of a collective act to anchor divinity into the earth. For Khafre, the Sphinx was more than a guardian. It was a projection of his own power into eternity, a colossal emblem that declared his reign inseparable from the order of the cosmos. Over time, the desert reclaimed what men had uncovered. Sands driven by wind crept higher and higher, until the Sphinx's body was buried once more. For generations, only the head remained visible, a strange and haunting presence staring out over the plateau. This partial concealment magnified the aura of mystery. Travelers who came upon it did not see the lion body at all. They saw only a giant human face emerging from the desert like a god rising from the earth. It is no wonder then that the Sphinx inspired legends of buried treasure and hidden knowledge. To a foreign eye, it was as if the sands themselves were conspiring to conceal something profound. Yet even the ancients of Egypt treated the Sphinx with reverence that suggests it was more than stone. Inscriptions from later dynasties speak of it as a divine presence connected to the sun god Ra, protector of the necropolis, a being both guardian and oracle. During the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, more than 1,000 years after Khafre, the Sphinx was already partly buried. According to an inscription now called the Dream Stele, Thutmose fell asleep in its shadow and dreamed that the great lion guardian promised him kingship if he would clear the sands from its body. When Thutmose became king, he honored this vision by ordering the Sphinx uncovered and restored. From then on, the Sphinx was not only a guardian of tombs, but a giver of legitimacy, a silent oracle that tied rulers to divine authority. As centuries passed, each new uncovering of the Sphinx renewed its mystery. The Greeks, inheriting fragments of Egyptian culture, wove it into their own myths of riddles and hidden knowledge. Later, chroniclers spoke of doors sealed beneath its paws, of chambers filled with writings from an age before the flood. The Sphinx thus became not merely a monument but a mirror, reflecting the imagination of every era. People projected onto it what they most desired or feared. For some, it was a guardian of treasure. For others, a custodian of lost wisdom. For still others, it was a divine enigma meant never to be solved. Modern archaeology has stripped away much of the myth, yet it has not banished the sense of wonder. We now know that the Sphinx is carved from a single mass of limestone, quarried in stages, with blocks removed from around it used to build nearby temples. We know its alignment faces directly east, greeting the rising sun on the horizon at each dawn. We know its weathering patterns are shaped partly by wind, partly by rain, a debate that continues to fuel arguments about its true age. But what remains is not diminished by knowledge. Instead, science has only deepened the mystery by showing us how much remains uncertain. The Sphinx is a paradox. It is utterly real, carved by human hands in a specific historical moment. And yet, it transcends that moment, radiating a sense of timelessness that makes it appear older than history itself. This paradox is why explorers, mystics, and scientists return to it again and again. They seek to decode not just the stone, but the meaning inscribed in silence. Each new method of study, from ground radar to erosion analysis, pushes at the edges of the unknown. Yet, at the heart of the mystery, the Sphinx remains impassive, its worn face gazing into the horizon, as though it knows truths it will never surrender. This enduring silence is why the Sphinx is more than an archaeological artifact. It is a symbol of human longing for answers. We see in it a gateway, perhaps not to literal chambers of hidden scrolls, but to the recognition that every civilization leaves behind riddles. Some can be solved with chisels and equations. Others endure, whispering through stone, reminding us that history is not only about what is known, but also about what must remain unknown. And so, as we stand before the Sphinx today, we do not merely witness a relic of Khafre's reign. We encounter a monument that has become layered with centuries of interpretation, excavation, restoration, and myth-making. Each generation has dug into its sands, both physically and metaphorically, searching for what lies beneath. Each generation has left with more questions than answers. This is the true power of the Sphinx. It turns the human desire for certainty into a deeper engagement with mystery. To follow its story further, we must step back from the aura of legend and turn to the practical evidence of stone and labor. We must ask how this colossus was built, what tools shaped it, and what relationship it had to the pyramids and temples around it. The enigma may draw us in, but the foundations of its mystery lie in the act of construction itself. What hands carved it, and why? These questions lead us directly into the heart of the next part of our journey, where the stone itself becomes the first source of testimony. The weight of history grows heavier the closer we lean toward the stone of the Sphinx. It is not enough to describe it as a monument. To stand in its presence is to be drawn into a continuum that stretches back to the very birth of organized human society. The limestone from which it is carved was formed millions of years before the first human ever walked the Nile Valley. Fossils of ancient marine creatures still rest within its layers, remnants of a sea that once covered this land long before deserts ever existed. The builders of the Sphinx may not have known the geological history in a modern sense, yet they must have sensed the eternal nature of the stone. In carving their guardian out of such rock, they inscribed their civilization into a timeline far beyond their own lives. The Sphinx is therefore not only a figure of lion and man, but a geological testament to the passage of eons. This awareness of eternity infused every choice of its builders. The orientation of the Sphinx, facing east toward the rising sun, was not random but deeply symbolic. Each dawn, the rays of light touch its face before they sweep across the plateau. This moment linked the king not just to divine guardianship, but to the endless cycle of rebirth that the Egyptians associated with the Sunday. It is as if the Sphinx greets the day on behalf of the entire civilization, embodying the continuity between night and day, life and death, king and cosmos. Such alignment reinforces that this monument was not simply decoration for a necropolis. but an integral part of a sacred landscape, designed with cosmic order in mind. The gaze of the Sphinx is fixed and eternal, yet our interpretations of it have shifted like the sands around its paws. When Napoleon's soldiers arrived in the 18th century, they marveled at its size and speculated about its origins, much as travelers had done for centuries. Stories spread that Napoleon's men shot away its nose, though drawings predating their arrival already show the nose missing. The truth, like much about the Sphinx, remains uncertain. Was the nose destroyed deliberately in an act of defacement, or did it crumble through natural erosion? Even this small detail becomes part of the larger enigma, a reminder that the Sphinx resists definitive answers. In the modern age, archaeology has tried to separate myth from material fact. Excavations have revealed how the blocks removed during the carving of the Sphinx were used to build nearby temples, including the Valley Temple of Khafre. This reveals a practical integration of labor, where the very act of creating the guardian also supplied stone for sacred architecture. Archaeologists have studied tool marks on the Sphinx's surface, comparing them to those found on other Old Kingdom monuments, confirming the technology of chisels and copper tools. Geological surveys have traced the layers of limestone, showing how softer layers weather more quickly, creating the stepped erosion patterns we see today. Yet even as science explains these features, debates persist. Some geologists argue that patterns of erosion suggest prolonged exposure to rainfall, hinting at a construction date older than Khafre's reign. Others insist that wind and sand are sufficient explanations. The Sphinx thus becomes a stage where science itself struggles with competing interpretations. But perhaps that is the true nature of the Sphinx's riddle. It is not a puzzle that demands one solution, but a mirror that reflects our search for meaning. For mystics, it confirms the existence of lost civilizations. For scientists, it challenges the limits of geological and archaeological certainty. For artists, it embodies the mystery of time. The Sphinx does not change, yet we see it differently depending on the questions we bring. It is this shifting lens that makes the Sphinx more than a relic. It is an active participant in human imagination. In the silence of the desert night, when the winds settle and the stars blaze overhead, one can imagine the Sphinx as more than stone. It is a presence, vast and immovable, as though it holds within it the memory of every civilization that has stood in awe before it. The pyramids, with their sharp lines, present certainty. The Sphinx, with its worn face and eroded body, presents questions. Both were built by the same people, yet they serve different purposes. One declares permanence, the other whispers of mystery. And it is often mystery, not certainty, that endures longest in the human heart. So we return to the central truth of this first encounter. The Great Sphinx of Giza is not only a guardian of tombs or a symbol of royal power. It is a riddle carved in stone, an enigma that has drawn the attention of explorers, rulers, and dreamers for nearly 5 millennia. To approach it is to enter into a dialogue with time itself. Its secrets may never be fully explained, for each generation sees in it what it needs to see, yet this is its greatest power. The Sphinx does not yield answers easily, but it compels us to keep asking questions. To seek the origins of its mystery, we must go deeper still, into the realm of construction. How exactly did the workers of Khafre's time carve such a figure from living rock? What engineering allowed them to achieve such scale and proportion? What relationship tied the Sphinx to the temples and pyramids that surround it? These questions lead us directly into the next chapter, where the process of building will be examined not only as a feat of labor, but as a deliberate act of sacred creation. The story of the Sphinx cannot be separated from the story of the pyramids. On the Giza Plateau, the guardian crouches beside the mortuary complex of Pharaoh Khafre, its gaze fixed on the rising sun, while behind it towers the pyramid traditionally attributed to the same king. To understand the mystery of the Sphinx, we must look closely at the evidence that ties it to Khafre's reign and to the monumental ambition of the Old Kingdom. Archaeologists have long debated whether the Sphinx might predate Khafre, but the balance of evidence points to its creation in the middle of the 3rd millennium before the Common Era, when Egypt's fourth dynasty transformed stone into the language of eternity. The first clue lies in the relationship between the Sphinx and Khafre's pyramid and Valley Temple. Blocks of limestone removed from the carving of the Sphinx were repurposed to build the adjacent temple structures. This is not speculation, but visible in the fit and composition of the stone. The quarry that became the Sphinx's body was also the source for the Valley Temple's megalithic walls. These blocks are enormous, some weighing more than 100 tons, moved and positioned with skill that still confounds engineers. The direct link between excavation and construction ties the Sphinx to Khafre's broader building program, suggesting that it was not an isolated creation but an integral part of a sacred landscape designed to glorify his reign. What is striking is that the Sphinx was not assembled from blocks like the pyramids. It was carved directly from living bedrock. This method demanded extraordinary planning. The builders could not adjust dimensions easily once carving began. They had to envision the final form and remove stone accordingly, revealing the lion's body and the king's face as though they had always been waiting beneath the desert surface. This subtractive process gave the Sphinx a permanence, unlike any other statue. It was not placed upon the earth but born from it, inseparable from the plateau itself. In this sense, it was more than a monument. It was the land made divine. Imagine the sight during Khafre's reign. The pyramid, rising in geometric precision, represented the king's stairway to the heavens. The mortuary temple, with its colonnades and polished limestone, served as the stage for rituals that ensured his eternal life. And crouching beside them, the Sphinx guarded the entire complex, its colossal body proclaiming power to all who approached. To walk toward Khafre's pyramid, one first encountered the Sphinx, as if the king's image itself demanded recognition before one entered the sacred domain. The psychological effect must have been overwhelming. Stone was not just architecture here, it was ideology. The construction methods remain a subject of fascination. Teams of workers armed with copper chisels, dolerite-pounding stones, and wooden levers labored under the scorching sun. Archaeological evidence suggests that skilled artisans directed large groups of laborers, many of whom were farmers conscripted during the Nile's flood season when fields lay underwater. These workers were housed in nearby villages, provided with bread, beer, and shelter, their service considered part of their duty to the state and the gods. Far from the myths of slaves toiling under whips, most scholars now recognize this as a highly organized workforce, motivated by religious duty and the authority of the pharaoh. As the carving progressed, different layers of limestone presented challenges. The upper layers were harder, holding detail for the face and head. The lower layers were softer, more prone to erosion, explaining why the body of the Sphinx has weathered more severely than its head. The builders adapted their methods to the nature of the stone, cutting trenches around the figure, then gradually freeing the body from the surrounding bedrock. The paws were extended outward, the tail curled along the side, giving the figure not just mass but vitality. Even today, despite erosion, the Sphinx seems poised with restrained energy, as though it could rise from the desert at any moment. The integration of the Sphinx with Khafre's pyramid complex strongly supports the view that it was commissioned during his reign. The alignment, the use of quarried stone, the architectural context, all converge on this conclusion. Yet, alternative theories persist. Some argue that the erosion patterns suggest the Sphinx may be older, perhaps thousands of years older, created by a forgotten civilization before the rise of dynastic Egypt. This claim, though lacking support in mainstream archaeology, has fueled popular fascination, feeding myths of lost knowledge and hidden chambers. The debate itself reveals something profound. The Sphinx is not only a monument of stone, it is a monument of interpretation, drawing us to ask whether our current knowledge is enough to explain its presence. Still, the most convincing picture is of a pharaoh seeking to immortalize his reign not only through pyramids, but through a guardian carved from the very plateau. Khafre's reign, like those of his predecessors, was marked by a drive to assert divine kingship. By carving his likeness upon a lion's body, he fused his image with both human and animal power, blending intellect with raw force. The Sphinx thus became more than art. It was a declaration that the king himself was the eternal protector of Egypt, inseparable from the land and the cosmos. To appreciate the scale of this achievement, Consider the logistics. The Pyramid of Khafre required an estimated 2 million blocks of stone. The Sphinx, though carved rather than built, demanded coordination of hundreds of workers over years. The Valley Temple, constructed from blocks weighing as much as 100 tons, required transport and precise placement with techniques we still struggle to replicate. Together, these works formed a sacred triad of pyramid, temple, and guardian. Each part reinforced the others, creating a landscape where stone embodied the eternal order of the universe. And so, as we walk among these ruins today, we see not only the remnants of ancient labor, but the echoes of a vision. The Sphinx was born in the age of Khafre, a time when kings sought to command not just armies and lands, but the very horizon. Its construction is testimony to human ingenuity, religious devotion, and the enduring desire to bind power into permanence. Yet, the story does not end here. For even as archaeology anchors the Sphinx in Khafre's reign, the stone itself carries scars that complicate the narrative. Patterns of erosion hint at forces beyond mere wind and sand, raising questions about whether the monument's age might stretch back further than we think. To confront these questions, we must look closer at the stone itself, at the geological clues etched into its weathered surface. For hidden in the patterns of erosion may lie evidence that challenges our assumptions about the Sphinx's true origins, and that mystery leads us directly into the next stage of our exploration. The desert winds do not tell a single story. They whisper through the stones of Giza, carrying echoes of labor, devotion, and ambition. Yet when we lean close to the Sphinx, the stone itself seems to speak in a language older than kings. The weathered flanks of the Guardian, marked with deep vertical fissures and uneven undulations, have drawn the eyes of geologists as much as archaeologists. It is in these scars of erosion that the next layer of mystery emerges. Did the Sphinx truly rise during the reign of Khafre, or do these marks hint at an age far older than the Old Kingdom? The debate between wind and water has become as iconic as the Sphinx itself. When the Sphinx was carved, the plateau was already an ancient landscape shaped by natural forces. The limestone layers vary in hardness, with softer strata eroding faster under the elements. On the Sphinx's body, some grooves run vertically in a way that certain geologists argue resembles patterns formed by prolonged rainfall rather than mere wind-blown sand. This observation, most famously advanced in the late 20th century, sparked a storm of controversy. If the weathering is truly the result of heavy rainfall, then the Sphinx would have to predate Khafre's reign by many centuries, perhaps even millennia, reaching back to a time when the Sahara was a greener, wetter land. Such a claim, if true, would rewrite the history of civilization itself. The mainstream scholarly response has been cautious and critical. Egyptologists argue that the erosion can be fully explained by wind, salt crystallization, and fluctuations in groundwater. They point out that other Old Kingdom structures show similar patterns where softer limestone layers are exposed. Moreover, no archaeological evidence of a civilization capable of carving the Sphinx exists prior to the 4th dynasty. The tools, the workforce organization, the religious symbolism all align with the era of Khafre. To push the Sphinx thousands of years earlier would require evidence of an advanced culture entirely unknown to history. Most scholars consider such a leap unsupported, a projection of modern imagination onto ancient stone. Yet the controversy persists because the stone is ambiguous. Vertical fissures and rounded profiles do bear resemblance to water erosion in other contexts. The Sahara, once a lush savanna, did experience wet periods thousands of years before Khafre. Could remnants of that climate have left their signature upon the Sphinx? Or are we misreading the scars, mistaking ordinary desert processes for extraordinary evidence? Science, like myth, struggles against the silence of stone, and the Sphinx remains, unyielding, as if content to let us argue in its shadow. This debate reflects a deeper truth about our relationship with monuments. We want certainty, but the Sphinx resists. It has become a battleground where geology and archaeology, science and speculation collide. Those who argue for great antiquity point to erosion as a geological clock, counting back through millennia to an age before Egypt's dynasties. Those who defend the Khafre attribution emphasize context, inscriptions, and the lack of supporting artifacts for a lost civilization. Between these positions lies a field of questions that keep the Sphinx alive in our imagination. But even within the accepted framework of Khafre's reign, the act of building the Sphinx reveals complexities worth marveling at. The integration of quarrying and construction meant that the monument was both statue and source. The trench carved around it not only freed the body, but also produced blocks for the Valley Temple. This dual function shows an efficiency of design that we might call sustainable in modern terms. Nothing was wasted. The land was shaped into both guardian and sanctuary. In this way, the Sphinx embodies the Egyptian genius for harmonizing labor, art, and religion. The workforce itself tells us something about the social order of the time. Archaeological discoveries of workers' villages near the pyramids show evidence of planned settlements, bakeries, breweries, and medical care. Graffiti left by workers proudly record the names of their crews, suggesting camaraderie and even humor among the builders. These were not faceless laborers, but communities united in service to a vision larger than themselves. In carving the Sphinx, they participated in an act that fused daily toil with eternal purpose. Every stroke of a chisel connected them to the divine. And yet, despite such evidence, the Sphinx continues to provoke the question of age. The dream of a deeper antiquity, of a civilization older than Egypt, refuses to fade. Perhaps this is because the Sphinx itself looks older than its surroundings. Its worn face, eroded body, and half-buried history create an impression of timelessness that invites speculation. Unlike the sharp lines of the pyramids, the Sphinx seems softened by ages beyond reckoning. Our eyes tell us it is older, even if archaeology insists otherwise. This tension between perception and evidence is part of its allure. The truth may lie not in choosing one side, but in recognizing that the Sphinx carries multiple histories at once. It is at once the product of Khafre's reign and the bearer of geological scars formed over thousands of years. Its body reflects both human chisels and natural forces. It is both an artifact of a known civilization and a canvas upon which later generations project myths of lost ages. This complexity is what makes it inexhaustible. Every theory, every excavation, every scan becomes another layer in its story. As we examine its construction and the debates about its erosion, we must remember that the Sphinx is not only a question of when, but also of why. Why did Khafre, or any king, choose to shape such a guardian from the bedrock? Why did they invest such effort into a figure that does not house a tomb or treasure, but stands in silence? The answer lies in the realm of symbolism. The Sphinx was not built to store wealth. It was built to embody power. Its lion body represented strength, its human face wisdom, its gaze eternity. To carve such a figure was to stake a claim not only on land, but on cosmic order. And yet beneath this grandeur, the scars of stone still provoke. Were they carved only by wind and sand, or by rains of a forgotten age? Could it be that the Sphinx holds within its very weathering the memory of climates long past? These questions remain unresolved, reminding us that even in the age of science, some mysteries endure. And it is in that endurance that the Sphinx continues to captivate. To press further into its secrets, we must now look not only at the visible surface, but at what may lie beneath. For the most tantalizing mysteries of the Sphinx are not written on its weathered skin, but hidden under the earth at its feet. Seismic surveys, radar scans, and legends alike all suggest the possibility of chambers below, chambers that may yet hold the key to the riddle. The ground beneath the Sphinx is as much a source of fascination as the monument itself. If the body carved from limestone represents the visible achievement of Khafre's builders, the earth below hints at possibilities still unconfirmed. Archaeologists studying the Sphinx complex in the 20th century noted irregularities in the subsurface layers. Seismic tests suggested voids or anomalies beneath the paws and alongside the body. These findings fueled speculation that hidden chambers might lie buried, chambers perhaps created by the builders or even by later dynasties seeking to preserve records or conduct rituals. Although mainstream Egyptology remains cautious, the mere suggestion of cavities beneath the Guardian has been enough to ignite imaginations across the world. The idea of hidden chambers is not new. Medieval chroniclers wrote of tunnels beneath the Sphinx leading to treasure. 19th century explorers, armed with dynamite and little regard for preservation, dreamed of finding sealed doors in the paws. In the modern age, advanced ground-penetrating radar has been used to map beneath the structure, detecting anomalies that could represent cavities. Some of these may be natural fissures in the limestone, while others might be remnants of ancient quarry activity. Yet, because no official excavation has been permitted beneath the Sphinx, the mystery remains unresolved. The Guardian continues to sit upon secrets it may or may not hold, indifferent to our curiosity. The possibility of underground structures adds to the aura of the Sphinx as a threshold. It is not just a statue watching over the plateau, it is a gateway, perhaps literally, into the unknown. In Egyptian symbolism, gateways often mark transitions between the realms of the living and the dead. The temples around the pyramids were designed as passages from earthly ritual to eternal afterlife. If chambers exist beneath the Sphinx, they may have served as symbolic thresholds, places where rituals connected the human king to divine forces. Alternatively, they may be nothing more than quarries and cavities left by the practical work of extracting stone. The difference is crucial, yet until excavation occurs, speculation will always thrive. This blend of evidence and uncertainty is what makes the Sphinx unique. It is both a product of known history and a vessel of unanswered questions. The construction process itself testifies to the genius of the Old Kingdom. By carving directly from bedrock, the builders created not only a statue but an inseparable part of the plateau. The integration of the Sphinx with Khafre's pyramid and temples confirms its place in his architectural vision. Yet the erosional scars and the subsurface anomalies hint at possibilities beyond this framework. They remind us that even the most studied monuments can still conceal mysteries. In this way, the Sphinx functions as a riddle in more than metaphor. Its weathering patterns present one question, its subterranean anomalies present another. Each answer we propose raises new uncertainties. Was the erosion caused by rain or wind? Are the voids beneath natural or artificial? Was the Guardian intended as a simple protector, or did it mark a deeper ritual landscape? These questions turn the Sphinx into an ongoing conversation between past and present, science and myth, certainty and speculation. Standing before the Sphinx today, one sees more than a monument. One sees layers of interpretation accumulated over centuries. To the builders, it was a symbol of kingship and cosmic order. To later dynasties, it became an oracle, a divine presence. To modern archaeologists, it is an artifact to be studied. To dreamers, it is a doorway to hidden knowledge. Each interpretation adds to its legacy, enriching rather than diminishing its power. The fact that the Sphinx can inspire both scientific investigation and mystical speculation is evidence of its unique hold on human imagination. Yet as compelling as these mysteries are, the story of the Sphinx is not only about what lies beneath or how it eroded. It is also about what it means to carve such a figure at all. The act of creating a guardian from stone is itself an expression of faith and authority. The builders were not only engineers, they were storytellers, inscribing into the bedrock a narrative of power that still speaks today. The Sphinx does not reveal secrets easily, but it does reveal the human desire to transcend mortality. Its silent presence says, "Here stood a king who sought to merge with eternity." To uncover the next layer of this story, we must look closer at the very stones of the Sphinx, reading their marks and textures as if they were lines of a forgotten text. The debate over erosion and age will carry us into deeper waters, where geology collides with archaeology, and where every crack in the stone may be interpreted as evidence of forgotten centuries. It is in these clues written in stone that the next chapter of our journey begins. The Sphinx is silent, yet its silence is not empty. Every groove in its flanks, every fissure in its paws, every grain of sand that has worn against its surface over millennia carries a fragment of its story. Unlike papyrus scrolls or carved hieroglyphs, stone does not speak in sentences. It speaks in patterns, in scars, in textures that scientists must learn to read. In this sense, the Sphinx is a text written by both human hands and natural forces, and our task is to decipher which marks belong to the builders and which belong to the desert and sky. When the first archaeologists began to clear the sands from its body in the 19th century, they noticed the stone was not uniform. The upper layers of limestone, used to carve the head and headdress, were harder and more resistant. The lower layers, forming much of the body, were softer, riddled with fossils, and more vulnerable to erosion. This difference explains why the body of the Sphinx appears more deeply weathered than the head. But geology is never so simple. The grooves cut into the body did not resemble only the chafing of wind and sand. To some eyes, they looked like the rounded, vertical channels created by heavy rainfall, the kind of rainfall that had not fallen on the Giza Plateau since the Sahara was green thousands of years before Khafre's reign. This observation gave birth to one of the most enduring controversies of Egyptology. Could the Sphinx be older than the pyramids themselves? Could it date not to the age of Khafre, but to some forgotten epoch when Egypt was still a land of savannas and rivers? Proponents of this theory argued that the weathering patterns could not have formed under the arid climate of the Old Kingdom. They suggested that the Sphinx might be the surviving fragment of a civilization lost to time, a civilization capable of carving colossal monuments but otherwise erased from history. Mainstream archaeologists, however, resist this claim. They argue that wind-driven sand, fluctuating groundwater, and salt crystallization can explain the patterns without invoking a lost epoch. They point to tool marks that match those found in Khafre's pyramid complex. They emphasize the absence of any cultural or material evidence for a pre-dynastic civilization capable of such feats. For them, the Sphinx is extraordinary but not anomalous. It belongs firmly within the flowering of Old Kingdom architecture, its weathering simply a matter of geology, not of lost history. Yet the stone refuses to yield fully to either side. Vertical fissures do resemble water erosion in many contexts. Rounded profiles suggest long exposure to moisture. At the same time, desert winds and shifting sands can mimic similar forms. The ambiguity of the stone makes it a canvas onto which we project our hopes and doubts. Scientists bring their instruments, measuring layers and mapping textures. Mystics bring their legends, speaking of ages before the flood. Both look at the same grooves, the same cracks, and see different stories. The Sphinx does not confirm either view. It simply endures. This endurance is part of its power. The Sphinx has survived cycles of climate, burial, excavation, and restoration. Each cycle leaves marks. When Thutmose IV cleared the sands more than 1,000 years after Khafre, the surface already bore scars of age. When later dynasties repaired it with stone blocks, they left seams that confuse modern eyes. When 19th and 20th century archaeologists restored its paws and chest, they introduced modern cement alongside ancient stone. The body we see today is thus a palimpsest, a layered text where different ages have written their presence. To read the stone is to read not only Khafre, but also every generation that has touched the monument since. But beyond the physical marks lies a deeper question. What does it mean if the Sphinx is older than we think? Would it rewrite human history, forcing us to imagine civilizations erased by time? Or would it simply remind us that climate, like stone, is not static, and that Egypt itself has shifted between wet and dry epochs many times? Perhaps both. Perhaps the grooves of the Sphinx tell us as much about the history of the Earth as they do about the history of humanity. As scientists continue to study the monument with lasers, radar, and 3D mapping, the stone continues to speak in its own slow language. It tells of ancient rains, of desert winds, of centuries of burial under dunes. It tells of chisels and hammers, of workers cutting blocks for temples. It tells of floods in the Nile and storms in the desert. But it does not tell us clearly who first carved the Guardian, or why they chose that moment in history. That is the riddle. We hold fragments, we read patterns, but the whole story remains elusive. And so, we turn from the visible surface to the unseen depths. For if the body of the Sphinx is a text we struggle to interpret, what lies beneath may be an entire library still unread. Seismic scans and radar hints suggest cavities under the paws and along the flanks. Are these natural fissures, ancient quarries, or intentional chambers carved by human hands? The stone above offers clues, but the earth below may hold the answers. It is to this subterranean mystery, half scientific and half legendary, that our journey must now descend. The stone of the Sphinx is not a uniform canvas. It is a mosaic of textures, layers, and histories pressed into a single colossal body. To study it is to enter into a dialogue not just with human builders but with the earth itself. The head, carved from a harder stratum of limestone, has survived with greater definition than the softer layers of the torso. This disparity has led to the curious effect we see today, where the face remains recognizable while the body appears weathered and scarred almost beyond recognition. The contrast feeds the illusion that the Sphinx might be older than it is, that the body belongs to an earlier age and the head to a later one, though most archaeologists agree both were carved in the same project. It is in the grooves and channels carved into the torso that the greatest controversies arise. Geologists who argue for an older Sphinx point to the rounded profiles and vertical channels that resemble rainfall erosion, suggesting that the monument once endured centuries of wet climate conditions. They connect this possibility to the so-called African humid period, thousands of years before Khafre, when the Sahara was dotted with lakes and rivers. If the Sphinx stood exposed in such a time, it might indeed predate dynastic Egypt. The implications are staggering. It would mean that a culture capable of carving such a colossus existed before any known pharaoh, a civilization now erased from memory. But Egyptologists counter with evidence anchored in context. The quarrying patterns around the Sphinx connect directly to Khafre's Valley Temple. The blocks removed from the body match the temple's construction. Tool marks consistent with copper chisels of the Old Kingdom are found on its surface, and no trace of a pre-dynastic advanced society has been uncovered in the Nile Valley. To accept the rainfall hypothesis without supporting cultural evidence would be to place geology above archaeology in the hierarchy of proof. For most scholars, that leap is unjustified. Still, the debate endures because both sides grasp fragments of truth. The Sahara was indeed wetter in earlier millennia, and rainfall did leave marks on the landscape. The Sphinx's erosion is undeniably complex, combining wind, water, and human restoration across centuries. Perhaps the monument has absorbed more than one climate regime, standing through shifts in the environment that we are only beginning to reconstruct. Perhaps the debate itself reveals more about us than about the Sphinx, our longing for deep antiquity, our desire to imagine civilizations lost, our need to see in stone the echoes of forgotten worlds. As we examine these clues, we must also acknowledge the role of restoration in complicating the story. The Sphinx has been patched, repaired, and rebuilt countless times. Blocks were added to its paws in the New Kingdom, stone masonry was used to stabilize its body in Roman times, and modern cement was applied in the 20th century. Each intervention left new surfaces, new textures, and new points of erosion. What appears to be ancient weathering may in some cases be the product of later repairs failing under the desert Sunday. The monument is not a single untouched relic, but a palimpsest of preservation efforts stretching across 3 millennia. To read the Sphinx accurately, then, one must separate the natural from the artificial, the ancient from the modern. This is no easy task. Laser scanning and digital modeling have begun to map its surface in unprecedented detail, recording every crack and curve. These technologies allow scientists to compare patterns of erosion across different sections, testing whether they align with rainfall, wind, or human alteration. Yet, even with such tools, the interpretation remains contested. Stone, for all its solidity, does not yield simple answers, and so we find ourselves circling back to the metaphor that has haunted the Sphinx since antiquity. It is a riddle. Its body tells us part of the story, but leaves enough ambiguity to spark endless theories. Was it Khafre's masterpiece, shaped and weathered within the span of dynastic Egypt? Or does its eroded torso whisper of a forgotten age, when rains fell on the Sahara and human hands carved guardians long before history began? The grooves do not resolve the question, they keep it alive. As we weigh these possibilities, one truth becomes clear. Whether the erosion was caused by wind or water, whether the Sphinx is 4,500 years old or even older, the fascination it inspires arises from its silence. It does not correct our theories. It does not offer clarifications. It stands mute, allowing us to project our doubts and dreams upon it. That is why its stone is more than material. It is a screen upon which we project the very concept of mystery. But there is one more layer to the stone story, hidden beneath its surface. For while erosion patterns have drawn the eyes of geologists, seismic and radar surveys have hinted at anomalies below. If the body of the Sphinx is a text written in scars, the ground beneath may be a book unopened. To turn that page, we must now descend beneath the paws into the realm of hidden chambers, where speculation and science collide. The earth beneath the Sphinx has long been the stage for dreams of hidden secrets. For centuries, people have wondered whether chambers, tunnels, or vast halls might lie buried under its paws, guarding the wisdom of ages past. The debate about erosion and age sets the surface of the monument at the center of controversy, but it is the question of what lies beneath that grips the imagination most fiercely, and it is here that modern science, with all its instruments, has added fuel rather than closure to the fire. In the 1970s and 1980s, seismic surveys were conducted around the Sphinx by geophysicists working in collaboration with Egyptologists. These studies measured how vibrations moved through the ground, and the results suggested the presence of anomalies, areas where the stone beneath was less solid or differently structured than the surrounding bedrock. To many, these anomalies hinted at cavities, perhaps chambers carved into the limestone by ancient hands. Later, in the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar added further intrigue, revealing more irregularities under the paws and flanks. The scientific reports were careful, speaking of voids and discontinuities rather than hidden rooms, but the leap in the popular imagination was immediate. If voids exist, why not passages? And if passages, why not a hall of records or a library of lost wisdom? Archaeologists, however, have been cautious. They note that the Giza Plateau is riddled with natural fissures and quarry remains. The entire area was once an industrial landscape of stone cutting, and irregularities in the bedrock are common. What appears as a cavity in a radar survey may be nothing more than a crack or an ancient cut abandoned by workers. Moreover, the Egyptian authorities have never permitted excavation directly beneath the Sphinx, both for reasons of preservation and because such work would risk destabilizing the monument. As a result, the anomalies remain unexplored, their true nature locked in stone. This uncertainty has created fertile ground for legends. Mystics claim that beneath the Sphinx lies the fabled Hall of Records, a chamber said to contain scrolls of ancient wisdom, perhaps from a civilization predating Egypt, or even from Atlantis itself. Such claims were popularized by early 20th century mystic Edgar Cayce, whose visions described a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx's paws holding knowledge of humanity's forgotten past. While historians dismiss such stories as myth, the very existence of unexplored voids keeps them alive in the public imagination. The line between science and legend blurs, for while archaeologists speak of fissures, the human mind craves secrets. The debate over what lies beneath is not only a clash of evidence and speculation, it also reflects the symbolic role of the Sphinx as a threshold. In myth and ritual, guardians stand at the entrance to hidden realms, blocking or guiding access to deeper truths. The Sphinx, crouched at the edge of the Giza necropolis, faces the rising sun as though standing at the gateway of eternity. To imagine chambers beneath it is to extend that symbolism into the earth itself. Whether or not such chambers exist, the idea fulfills the archetype, the guardian who does not only watch but conceals. What makes the mystery enduring is the balance of possibility and restraint. Science has revealed enough to keep the question alive, but not enough to close it. Legends have provided a narrative, but not evidence. The result is a monument that continues to exist in two realms at once. In the realm of archaeology, it is a carved statue linked to Khafre's pyramid. In the realm of imagination, it is a sentinel above hidden libraries of lost ages. Both realms feed each other, ensuring that the Sphinx remains not only a subject of study but a source of wonder. As we step back from the debates over erosion and hidden voids, what emerges is a deeper understanding of the Sphinx as a palimpsest of human longing. We want it to be older than history, so we read rain into its cracks. We want it to guard secrets, so we see chambers in its bedrock. We want it to answer riddles, so we fill its silence with our own voices. The Sphinx, indifferent, allows all these projections, never correcting us, never confirming. Its power lies in its refusal to speak. And yet, even in silence, it teaches. It teaches us about the limits of evidence, about the way natural processes can be mistaken for human design, and about the way human imagination fills voids with myths. The Sphinx is both a geological record and a cultural mirror. It bears the marks of rain, wind, and chisel, but it also bears the marks of every story we tell about it. It is not only a monument of stone, but a monument of interpretation. With this recognition, we turn now from the physical to the legendary. If chambers do exist beneath the Sphinx, what stories have people told about their contents? What myths of hidden libraries, lost scrolls, and ancient wisdom have gathered around its silent paws? To answer this, we must follow the trail of legend itself, from Egyptian texts to modern mystics, into the realm of the Hall of Records. Beneath the paws of the Sphinx, the imagination of humanity has dug deeper than any archaeologist's shovel. The very idea that something might be hidden below its massive body has become one of the most enduring threads in the fabric of its legend. What lies under the Guardian of Giza? Is it nothing more than fractured limestone and the scars of quarrying, or are there chambers deliberately carved to hold knowledge, ritual, or power? This question, hovering between science and myth, has driven explorers for centuries and continues to stir debate even in the age of satellites and radar. The modern story begins with science, not speculation. In the 1970s, a team of geophysicists conducted seismic studies around the Sphinx, sending vibrations into the ground and measuring how they moved through the rock. To their surprise, they detected anomaly zones where the stone beneath did not behave like solid bedrock. These could have been natural fissures, but they also resembled cavities. Later, in the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar offered further evidence of irregularities beneath the paws and along the body. The findings were reported in cautious terms: discontinuities, anomalies, voids. But in the realm of public imagination, such words translated instantly into chambers. The allure of these possibilities is not difficult to grasp. The Sphinx has always stood as a threshold, both literal and symbolic. If there are voids beneath it, then perhaps the Guardian was not only carved to watch over the plateau, but also to conceal hidden spaces. Were these spaces practical storage rooms, quarries, or drainage channels? Or were they ceremonial, designed for rituals or burials? The absence of excavation has prevented definitive answers. Egyptian authorities, wary of destabilizing the monument, have never permitted drilling beneath the Sphinx. As a result, we are left with the tantalizing situation of anomalies confirmed by instruments, but unexplored by excavation. This ambiguity has proven fertile ground for speculation. Mystics claim the voids are entrances to the Hall of Records, a mythical library of lost wisdom. Alternative historians suggest they might hold evidence of an unknown civilization predating Egypt. Even more cautious voices wonder whether secret passages might connect the Sphinx to nearby temples or even to Khafre's pyramid itself. Each of these ideas stretches from a kernel of evidence, those anomalies detected by seismic and radar surveys, but then leaps into interpretation. Without excavation, the voids remain blank pages on which anyone may write. The scientific community, for its part, urges restraint. Egyptologists point out that voids in limestone are common. Natural fissures, quarry cuts, or zones of softer rock can all produce the kinds of anomalies detected. The Giza Plateau is riddled with underground features from centuries of stone extraction. It is entirely possible that what lies beneath the Sphinx is nothing more mysterious than the residue of quarrying that created the statue itself. Yet even scientists cannot dismiss the data entirely. The anomalies are real, though their meaning remains uncertain. This is the heart of the debate. Enough evidence to keep the question alive, not enough to settle it. The fascination is heightened by the long history of legends about passages beneath the Sphinx. Medieval accounts spoke of hidden doors in its paws, leading to underground halls. Travelers in the 19th century speculated about sealed tunnels. Even Napoleon's scholars, during their surveys of Egypt, recorded local stories of hidden chambers. When modern science seemed to confirm the presence of voids, these ancient and medieval legends were given new life. It was as if the Sphinx itself had whispered agreement with centuries of speculation. Yet we must remind ourselves that legend and evidence are not the same. The Sphinx has been a canvas for human imagination for millennia, and its silence allows us to paint whatever we wish upon it. The debate over hidden chambers is less about what is actually beneath the paws than about what we want to find there. For some, it is treasure. For others, it is knowledge. For still others, it is proof that history is deeper and stranger than we believe. Each desire shapes the interpretation of the anomalies, turning cracks in the stone into doors of mystery. The true significance of the hidden chambers debate is not that it proves or disproves anything. It is that it demonstrates how the Sphinx sits at the crossroads of science and myth. Instruments of geology detect irregularities, but human imagination turns them into gateways. Archaeologists urge caution, but legends insist on wonder. Between these two poles, the Sphinx endures, allowing both science and story to coexist at its feet. And so we stand before the guardian, knowing that something unusual lies beneath, but not knowing what. The stone above whispers of rains and chisels, while the earth below hints at cavities unseen. The riddle deepens, not because answers are found, but because every discovery opens a new layer of mystery. If we cannot yet know what lies beneath, we can at least explore the legends that have grown around this possibility. For while science gives us voids, myth fills them with visions. The whispers of chambers beneath the Sphinx have stirred more than academic curiosity. They have become the beating heart of a global fascination, weaving together threads of archaeology, speculation, and myth. What science describes as discontinuities in the bedrock, popular imagination transforms into gateways to hidden realms. The Sphinx does not deny these projections, and so the story grows, layer by layer, with each new generation. In the early 1990s, a wave of renewed interest swept across the world when ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed striking anomalies beneath the monument. The surveys, carried out with modern equipment, showed significant differences in density beneath the paws and flanks. Reports hinted at rectangular cavities, their shapes suggestive of something artificial rather than natural. International media seized upon the findings, portraying them as proof that secret rooms waited to be uncovered. For the public, it was as if the Sphinx had spoken for the first time in millennia, offering confirmation of the stories whispered about it since antiquity. Yet the response of scholars was more restrained. Egyptologists emphasized that voids and fissures are common in limestone plateaus. The Giza plateau has been quarried for millennia, leaving behind uneven subsurface features that easily produce anomalies in seismic or radar data. Without excavation, they argued, no claim of chambers could be justified. The Egyptian authorities, wary of both the risks to the structure and the flood of sensationalist claims, restricted access and halted attempts to drill. Thus, the anomalies remained untested, suspended in ambiguity. It is in this space between evidence and interpretation that legends thrive. Among the most persistent is the idea of a hall of records, a mythical archive said to contain the knowledge of humanity's earliest days. Popularized in the 20th century by the American mystic Edgar Cayce, the Hall of Records was described as a vast library hidden beneath the Sphinx, holding scrolls that reveal the forgotten history of Atlantis and the origins of civilization. While archaeologists dismiss this as fantasy, the combination of Cayce's prophecy and modern radar anomalies has proven irresistible to believers. To them, the voids detected beneath the Sphinx are not natural fissures, but the very chambers foretold in visions. The debate thus extends beyond science into culture. On one side stand the archaeologists, insisting on evidence, context, and restraint. On the other stand mystics, alternative historians, and the general public, eager for revelations that overturn orthodox history. Between them lies the Sphinx, silent and unmoved, allowing both sides to project their desires. This dynamic has turned the monument into more than a relic. It has made it a stage upon which the struggle between reason and imagination plays out. There is also a political dimension. The Egyptian authorities guard the Sphinx fiercely, not only to preserve its structure but to control the narrative of its meaning. Excavations beneath it could destabilize its foundations. They could also unleash waves of speculation that overshadow serious scholarship. By limiting access, the authorities maintain both the physical safety of the monument and the cultural authority of Egyptology, yet their caution also feeds suspicion. To those inclined to believe in secrets, every denial becomes proof of concealment. The Sphinx, in this way, does not just stand over the sands, it stands at the center of a contest over who controls history itself. But what if the voids are real chambers? What might they contain? The sober answer is that they could be nothing more than ancient quarries, storage pits, or unfinished works. They could be natural cavities shaped by groundwater. They might hold rubble, not relics. Yet even this does not diminish their significance. To confirm such chambers would still expand our understanding of the monument's history. It would reveal how the builders shaped the land, how later dynasties used or abandoned it, and how natural processes reshaped the plateau over millennia. In archaeology, even the absence of treasure is a discovery, for it tells us what the past was not. Still, the allure of mystery endures. For many, the dream of unlocking a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx is not about finding treasure, but about finding meaning. It is about proving that there is more to human history than we know, that beneath the surface of accepted narratives lie truths waiting to be revealed. The Sphinx, crouched in silence, embodies this longing. Its paws seem to cover not just stone, but possibility. As we weigh these possibilities, we must recognize that the hidden chambers debate is as much about us as it is about the Sphinx. It reveals our hunger for secrets, our impatience with silence, our refusal to accept that some riddles may never be solved. Whether the voids are fissures or halls, the debate itself has become part of the Sphinx's story. It has transformed the Guardian from a relic of Khafre into a global icon of mystery. To continue the journey, we must now move beyond the scientific instruments and into the realm of legend. For the chambers beneath the Sphinx may remain unexplored, but in myth, they have been visited countless times. Ancient texts, medieval tales, and modern prophecies have all filled those voids with stories. To understand why the hidden chambers matter, we must follow these legends into the Hall of Records, where myth and memory intertwine. The Sphinx does not speak, yet the silence beneath its paws has become louder than any words. For every anomaly revealed by seismic tests or radar scans, stories have rushed in to fill the void. Some believe the cavities are remnants of quarrying, others believe they are natural fissures, but to many they are doorways sealed by time. The Sphinx itself has become the stage on which this debate plays out, its presence lending weight to both science and speculation. One of the most striking features of the hidden chambers debate is its persistence. Decade after decade, as instruments improve and surveys become more precise, the results continue to hint at irregularities without resolving them. This is not unusual in geology, where natural formations can be complex and ambiguous. Yet in the case of the Sphinx, ambiguity is enough, because the monument is already wrapped in mystery. Even the suggestion of voids transforms into an invitation for legend. The ground beneath most statues is simply earth. Beneath the Sphinx, it becomes a question mark. The restrictions on excavation add to this atmosphere. To protect the structure, Egyptian authorities have consistently refused permission for drilling or tunneling under the Sphinx. Engineers warn that disturbing the bedrock could destabilize the monument. Egyptologists caution that any attempt to reach potential voids could damage an irreplaceable artifact. Their caution is reasonable, yet it has unintended consequences. To those who yearn for secrets, denial itself becomes evidence. If nothing lies beneath, why not prove it by looking? The refusal feeds suspicion, turning practical preservation into a spark for conspiracy. It is not only mystics who feel the pull of the unknown. Even sober archaeologists admit that the possibility of chambers, however mundane their contents, is tantalizing. To discover a storage pit or a passageway would add to our understanding of the monument's construction and use. It might reveal how workers organized their quarrying, how later dynasties maintained or modified the structure, or how natural processes shaped the bedrock. The truth may be less dramatic than legend, but it would still be valuable. In archaeology, Every stone moved tells a story, even if it is not the story we expect. Yet, the enduring fascination with hidden chambers speaks to something deeper than evidence. It speaks to a universal human impulse, the belief that what is most important is not on the surface but concealed, waiting to be uncovered. Beneath mountains, we imagine caverns of treasure. Beneath ruins, we dream of secret tunnels. Beneath the Sphinx, we hope for scrolls, relics, or truths lost to history. This impulse is not only about knowledge, it is about meaning. We want the Sphinx to hide something because we want the universe itself to hide something, to whisper that there is always more than meets the eye. In this way, the debate over hidden chambers is not simply about geology or archaeology. It is about faith and imagination. The Sphinx crouches between worlds, its lion's body grounded in stone, its human face lifted toward eternity. It embodies the tension between what is known and what is possible. Whether the anomalies beneath it are fissures, quarries, or halls, they have already served their purpose. They have kept the riddle alive. They have ensured that the Sphinx is not just a monument of the past, but a living mystery of the present. And so we leave this chapter not with answers, but with the recognition that the Sphinx's silence is its greatest power. It allows science to measure, legend to dream, and imagination to wander. The debate over hidden chambers may never be resolved, yet it continues to shape how we see the Guardian of Giza. In its paws lies not only stone but possibility, and that possibility is enough to keep the world watching. As we move forward, we turn from science to myth, for while archaeology hesitates at the surface, legend rushes below without restraint. The Hall of Records, the Library of Lost Ages, the Vault of Forgotten Wisdom, these are not findings of seismic surveys but stories told across centuries. To understand the true depth of the hidden chambers debate, we must now step into that realm of legend, where myth becomes as enduring as stone. The Sphinx crouches upon the sands of Giza in silence, yet in that silence generations have heard whispers of hidden knowledge. Beneath its paws, storytellers and visionaries have placed vaults of wisdom, scrolls of lost civilizations, and archives of forgotten worlds. These tales form one of the most powerful myths to surround the Sphinx, the legend of the Hall of Records. Unlike seismic scans or archaeological digs, these stories do not emerge from stone. They emerge from the human imagination, woven through centuries of wonder and longing. The seeds of this myth can be traced to antiquity, though never directly in Egyptian texts. The Egyptians themselves left no mention of a hidden library beneath the Guardian of Giza. Their writings describe the Sphinx as a divine protector, an embodiment of royal power and solar energy, but nowhere do hieroglyphs record a chamber of wisdom sealed in its foundations. Yet, absence invites invention. Later cultures, inheriting fragments of Egyptian lore, filled the silence with their own narratives. Greek visitors to Egypt associated the Sphinx with riddles and mysteries, a symbol not just of guardianship but of hidden knowledge. Medieval Arab chroniclers, wandering among the ruins, spoke of sealed doors and secret tunnels leading to treasures buried before the flood. Each generation added a new layer of imagination, until the Sphinx was not only a monument but a gateway into myth. The story reached its most vivid expression in the 20th century through the American mystic Edgar Cayce. Known as the Sleeping Prophet, Cayce claimed in trance readings that beneath the Sphinx lay a hall of records. According to his visions, this hall contained scrolls and tablets recording the lost history of humanity, particularly the story of Atlantis. Cayce declared that survivors of the Atlantean catastrophe built the Hall of Records in Egypt, hiding their wisdom for future generations. He predicted that the chamber would be discovered in the latter half of the 20th century, a revelation that would transform human understanding of its origins. The prophecy captured imaginations worldwide, and when scientific surveys later revealed anomalies beneath the Sphinx, Cayce's visions seemed, to his followers, confirmed. Mainstream archaeology, however, finds no evidence for such a hall. Excavations around the Sphinx have uncovered tunnels and restoration shafts, but nothing resembling a vast library of ancient wisdom. Egyptian texts, so detailed in describing their rituals and monuments, never once mention a hall of records. The story remains firmly in the realm of myth, a legend built not upon stone but upon desire. Yet it persists because it fulfills a universal hunger. We want the past to hold secrets, to whisper that our story is older, grander, more mysterious than we know. The Hall of Records is powerful precisely because it has never been found. If excavations uncovered nothing but sand and fissures, the legend might fade. But as long as voids remain unexplored, the myth can breathe. The Sphinx, silent as ever, provides the perfect vessel. Its ancient face does not contradict the tale, and its buried paws conceal enough unknown to keep belief alive. In this way, the Hall of Records functions not as history, but as myth made flesh, a dream given weight by the stone of Giza. Yet myths matter. They shape how we see monuments, how we interpret anomalies, how we imagine the past. The Hall of Records may never exist beneath the Sphinx, but it exists in the minds of millions who believe it does. It has inspired books, documentaries, and pilgrimages. It has fueled debates between archaeologists and mystics, between skeptics and believers. It has made the Sphinx not only a guardian of Khafre's necropolis, but a guardian of humanity's collective imagination. As we move deeper into this story, we must hold two truths together. The Hall of Records is not supported by evidence, yet it is undeniably real as a cultural force. It may not lie beneath the Sphinx in stone, but it lies beneath the Sphinx in myth, layered into the very way we speak of it. To understand the Sphinx fully, we must understand not only the chisels that shaped it, but the legends that surround it. For sometimes, what matters most about a monument is not only what it is, but what we believe it might be. And so, to explore the Hall of Records is not to enter a chamber of scrolls, but to enter the human imagination itself. The next steps of our journey will follow these legends where evidence cannot go, tracing the persistence of myth even in the face of silence. The Hall of Records legend thrives because it touches on something deeper than archaeology, the longing for a lost inheritance. Across cultures, there is a recurring belief that ancient civilizations once possessed wisdom far beyond our own, wisdom that was hidden away to survive cataclysm and time. The Sphinx, crouched in silence at the edge of the desert, became a natural vessel for such hopes. Its enigmatic face and half-buried body seemed to promise concealment, as though the sands themselves were keeping a secret. The Egyptian record, however, tells a different story. Inscriptions from the Old Kingdom through the New Kingdom speak of rituals, offerings, and royal authority. The dream stele of Thutmose IV, standing between the paws, describes a vision in which the Sphinx promises kingship in exchange for being freed from the sand. Nowhere in these texts is there mention of hidden archives or records. To the Egyptians, the Sphinx was a sacred guardian, not a vault. And yet, precisely because the texts are silent, the imagination has been free to fill the gap. What the Egyptians did not write, later generations invented. Medieval chroniclers in the Arab world embroidered the story further. They described sealed doors in the Sphinx's body, leading to halls filled with treasure or knowledge. Some claimed that priests hid records before the Great Flood, a theme echoing across many ancient cultures. These accounts were not based on excavation, but on the natural aura of mystery the monument inspired. To a traveler standing before a half-buried colossus, the idea of hidden passageways would have seemed almost inevitable. When Edgar Cayce introduced his visions in the 20th century, he drew upon this long tradition and gave it new life. His claim that the Hall of Records held the wisdom of Atlantis linked the Sphinx to a myth older still, the story told by Plato of a mighty island civilization lost to the sea. By joining Atlantis to Egypt, Cayce's prophecy wove two of humanity's most enduring mysteries into a single thread. To his followers, the Sphinx became not only the guardian of Khafre's necropolis, but the keeper of humanity's forgotten origins. The influence of this vision spread far beyond Cayce's circle. Popular books and documentaries repeated the idea, often presenting it as if it were part of Egyptian tradition. The discovery of anomalies beneath the Sphinx by modern surveys seemed to confirm the prophecy, though the data itself was ambiguous. The Hall of Records became part of the global conversation about the Sphinx, inseparable from serious archaeology in the public mind. Even those who reject the legend entirely cannot avoid discussing it, for it has become too deeply entwined with the monument's identity. Why does such a myth endure despite the absence of evidence? Perhaps because it answers a need that science does not. Archaeology reveals the labor of workers, the ambitions of kings, the weathering of stone. Myth promises something more, a revelation, a discovery that will transform our understanding of who we are. The Hall of Records is not just a library in the sand, it is a symbol of hidden truth itself. To believe in it is to believe that the past holds keys to our future, that somewhere beneath the silence of the Sphinx lies the answer to the riddle of humanity. Even if the chambers do not exist, the myth has shaped how we see the Sphinx. Visitors come not only to marvel at its size, but to wonder what it conceals. Scholars must contend with the legend in order to clarify the evidence. The Sphinx's power lies not in what is proven, but in what is possible, and the Hall of Records is the most vivid embodiment of that possibility. As the myth persists, it raises a question as old as the Sphinx itself. Which is more enduring? The stone body that has weathered millennia, or the stories we tell about it? The physical monument may one day erode to dust, but the legend of the Hall of Records could live on in human imagination long after the stone is gone. That is the paradox of myth. It can outlast the very monuments that inspired it. To follow the thread further, we must examine why such myths persist in the face of silence. What is it in human nature that drives us to place libraries under statues, treasure beneath temples, and secrets in every silence? The persistence of the Hall of Records tells us as much about ourselves as it does about the Sphinx. The Hall of Records myth is more than a single prophecy or a passing legend. It is a story that has taken root in the collective imagination, drawing nourishment from ancient silences, medieval fantasies, and modern visions. To understand its persistence, we must see how it weaves together themes that have always fascinated humanity: catastrophe, survival, and hidden wisdom. Many ancient cultures carried memories of great floods, disasters that swept away civilizations and reshaped the earth. The story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible, the Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh, and flood myths from as far as India and the Americas all reflect this archetype. The Hall of Records fits naturally into this framework. If a catastrophe once destroyed a mighty civilization like Atlantis, then survivors would surely have hidden their knowledge for the future. The Sphinx, crouched at the edge of the desert, became the imagined vault of that inheritance. The myth does not come from Egyptian texts, but from a universal human pattern: the belief that wisdom survives disaster by being concealed. This pattern explains why the idea persists even against all evidence. Archaeologists present the Sphinx as a creation of Khafre, a guardian of the Giza plateau, its mysteries rooted in geology and history rather than Atlantis. Yet for those drawn to the legend, the absence of evidence only deepens the allure. If the Hall of Records were obvious, it would already have been found. Its power lies in secrecy. It must be hidden to fulfill its role as the vessel of forgotten truth. The endurance of this myth also reflects the Sphinx's unique character. Unlike the pyramids, which are tombs with clear purposes, the Sphinx is enigmatic. It does not house a body or treasure. Its role is symbolic, ambiguous, undefined. That ambiguity makes it a perfect canvas for projection. A lion with a human face, gazing eternally toward the horizon, inspires the sense that it knows something we do not. To place a hidden library beneath it feels natural, as if the silence of its stone mouth demands an echo below. Even as science advances, the myth adapts. Seismic surveys and radar scans, which detect anomalies beneath the paws, are seized upon as proof. Popular culture amplifies these findings, blending cautious scientific terms like cavity and void with imagery of hidden chambers and lost scrolls. Documentaries, novels, and films present the Hall of Records not as speculation, but as expectation, something waiting to be revealed. The legend thrives in this intersection of data and desire, where even ambiguous evidence becomes confirmation. Yet what is most revealing is not whether the Hall of Records exists, but why we want it to exist. We want to believe that history is not complete, that beneath the surface lies a deeper story. We want to believe that our ancestors knew things we have forgotten, that wisdom greater than ours is waiting to be recovered. The Hall of Records promises all this. It is a myth of humility and hope, suggesting that humanity is not the pinnacle of history, but part of a longer cycle of rise, fall, and renewal. And so the Sphinx continues to guard not only the plateau of Giza, but also the imagination of the world. Beneath its paws lies not a proven library, but a legend that refuses to fade. Whether or not the Hall of Records is real in stone, it is undeniably real in culture. It has shaped how millions see the Sphinx, how they interpret anomalies, how they dream of the past. In that sense, the myth has already fulfilled its purpose. It has kept the Sphinx alive as more than an artifact. It has made it a symbol of mystery itself. As we close this chapter, the lesson becomes clear. The Hall of Records does not exist in hieroglyphs or chambers. It exists in us, in the stories we tell, in the longing we project onto stone. The Sphinx remains silent, but in that silence, it has allowed myth to flourish. The Guardian of Giza holds no scrolls, yet it guards something just as enduring: the human need to believe that beneath the surface of history lies a deeper truth. With the myths explored, we return now to what is known. For even if no Hall of Records exists, there are real tunnels, passages, and restoration shafts within and around the Sphinx. These too have fueled the sense of hidden secrets. To separate fact from legend, we must now examine the documented tunnels and repairs that have marked the Sphinx through centuries of care. The Sphinx is not untouched stone. For more than 4,000 years, it has been buried, uncovered, repaired, tunneled, and reinforced by countless hands. Each generation that encountered it left its mark, whether through reverence, curiosity, or preservation. These interventions, often necessary to protect the monument from collapse, have also deepened the aura of mystery that surrounds it. For when explorers and visitors see passages cut into its body or masonry added to its sides, the mind leaps quickly to secrets concealed within. The truth is less sensational, yet no less fascinating. The Sphinx has been altered by both ancient Egyptians and modern restorers, and those alterations have shaped the very way we imagine what lies within. The earliest recorded tunnel work dates back to the New Kingdom, more than 1,000 years after the Sphinx was carved. During the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, the dream stele was placed between its paws to commemorate a vision in which the god promised him kingship if he freed the Sphinx from sand. But clearing away the sand was not the only work undertaken. Stone blocks were added to repair parts of the paws and chest that had eroded. These ancient restorations are visible even today, their texture and color distinct from the original bedrock. Later dynasties too attempted repairs, patching cracks and stabilizing the Guardian against the relentless desert. Each intervention was both an act of devotion and an admission of fragility. Even the eternal Guardian required human care to endure. Centuries later, during the Greco-Roman period, further tunneling and repairs took place. Explorers cut shafts into the body in search of chambers or structural weaknesses. Some of these passages were reinforced with masonry, others abandoned. When Arab chroniclers visited in the Middle Ages, they recorded stories of sealed doors and blocked tunnels, evidence of both real passageways and the legends they inspired. These early accounts, blending observation and imagination, laid the foundation for the idea that the Sphinx conceals hidden interiors. In the modern era, archaeologists of the 19th century brought systematic excavation to the Sphinx, clearing the sands that had once again buried it up to its neck. In their eagerness, they sometimes mistook restoration shafts for entrances to hidden chambers. Tunnels dug for repairs were described as secret passages. Masonry added for stabilization was imagined as evidence of deliberate concealment. The more explorers dug, the more the aura of secrecy grew. Even necessary maintenance seemed to confirm the idea that the Sphinx was more than it appeared. In the 20th century, large-scale restorations added new layers of intervention. Cement and stone blocks were used to stabilize the crumbling body, especially along the flanks and paws. Engineers inserted reinforcement to prevent collapse. In some cases, these works involved cutting into the body to inspect cracks, producing cavities later mistaken for ancient tunnels. To an observer standing before the monument, the sight of masonry seams and filled openings naturally suggested hidden interiors. In reality, they were the scars of preservation. Yet perception matters as much as fact, and so the legend grew. The existence of real tunnels is undeniable. Some were cut for repairs, some to relieve pressure, others simply exploratory shafts made by curious hands over the centuries. None has revealed a hidden chamber or library, yet their very presence has been enough to sustain the idea. The Sphinx appears not as a solid monolith, but as a body riddled with passages. For the public, that is enough to imagine secrets waiting in the dark. For archaeologists, these tunnels are reminders that even the most massive monuments are vulnerable. That stone requires intervention if it is to survive the ages. In truth, the tunnels tell a story not of lost civilizations, but of human stewardship. They show how the Sphinx has been cared for, abandoned, rediscovered, and saved again and again. They show how each age has interpreted its duty to the guardian, whether through pious offerings, practical repairs, or scientific reinforcement. The Sphinx we see today is not only the work of Khafre's builders, but of countless hands since, each carving, patching, or filling in their attempt to preserve eternity. Yet it is easy to see how these practical interventions feed the sense of mystery. A visitor standing at the paws, noticing seams of stone and the outlines of ancient shafts, cannot help but imagine doors sealed against intrusion. When combined with legends of hidden halls and modern scans revealing anomalies, the tunnels add to the impression that the Sphinx is hollow, that within or beneath it something lies concealed. The truth is both simpler and more profound. The Sphinx is filled not with treasure but with history itself, layer upon layer of human care. As we step away from these physical repairs and passages, another chapter of the Sphinx's story emerges. For if ancient and modern hands have tunneled into its body, modern science has learned to tunnel into its mysteries with technology. From radar to muon imaging, new tools probe what human eyes cannot see. And once again, what they reveal is tantalizing enough to fuel both science and myth. The body of the Sphinx is scarred, with evidence of centuries of human intervention. Walk close to its flanks, and you will see seams where ancient blocks meet original bedrock, where modern cement fills gaps, and where shafts have been cut and later sealed. These features are not the product of hidden civilizations, but of human attempts to preserve the monument from collapse. Yet, to an untrained eye, they appear as entrances, suggesting that the Sphinx conceals a labyrinth within. This paradox, where repairs meant to protect the guardian also fuel the sense of mystery, has shaped its reputation for generations. Archaeologists working in the 20th century documented several distinct tunnels and cavities in and around the statue. Some are narrow shafts cut into the back or sides, intended for inspection or stabilization. Others are ancient restoration passages, filled with masonry that does not perfectly match the original stone. A handful were exploratory cuts made in earlier centuries by those searching for hidden chambers. None has revealed a grand interior, but their very existence keeps the speculation alive. When explorers see a blocked tunnel, they rarely imagine it was for reinforcement. They imagine it leads somewhere forbidden. One of the most intriguing features lies near the rump of the Sphinx, where a vertical shaft descends into the body. This passage, first noted in the early 20th century, was cut during restoration and reinforced in later centuries. It does not connect to any chamber, but its mere presence has led many to speculate that it once served as a doorway. Another opening, on the northern flank, shows signs of ancient quarrying. It likely functioned as an access point for removing stone, yet legends quickly transformed it into the entrance of a hidden passage. Even the paws, heavily restored in the New Kingdom, and again in modern times, bear traces of cavities mistaken for sealed doors. The most dramatic restorations occurred during the late 20th century, when engineers worked to halt the crumbling of the body. They added large blocks of stone along the chest, flanks, and lower body. These additions, necessary for structural stability, created visible joints that outsiders often misinterpret as evidence of secret compartments. The irony is striking. Every act of preservation deepens the aura of mystery. The more the Sphinx is saved, the more it appears to conceal. For Egyptologists, these tunnels and restorations are invaluable evidence of how the Sphinx has been perceived and maintained across ages. They show that ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and modern caretakers alike recognized the fragility of the guardian and sought to preserve it. They reveal techniques of ancient masonry, choices of material, and evolving ideas about conservation. The Sphinx, often imagined as eternal and unchanging, is in fact a monument of constant adaptation, reshaped again and again to withstand the march of time. For the wider world, however, the tunnels have become symbols of secrecy. Photographs of open shafts circulate widely, often stripped of context, and presented as proof of hidden chambers. Visitors peer into cracks and joints, convinced they are glimpsing the edge of a mystery. In this way, the practical realities of preservation feed directly into the myth of concealment. What archaeologists see as restoration scars, the public sees as riddles. It is worth pausing to recognize the quiet heroism of those who undertook these restorations. Without the blocks added in the New Kingdom, the paws might have crumbled entirely. Without the reinforcements of the 20th century, the body might have collapsed under the weight of erosion. Every tunnel cut into the Sphinx, though often mistaken for an entrance, was an effort to preserve. The fact that the Guardian still crouches on the Giza Plateau today is due as much to these interventions as to Khafre's original vision. And yet, because of these interventions, the sense of mystery has only grown. The Sphinx does not stand as a sealed monolith, but as a patched and tunneled body, a monument visibly marked by ages of human hands. To the scholar, this is evidence of resilience. To the dreamer, it is evidence of secrets. Both views are true in their way. For the Sphinx contains not hidden chambers of scrolls, but a hidden record of human devotion. As science advances, these restorations themselves have become subjects of study. Laser mapping and digital models now record every seam, every block, every shaft. The tunnels that once sparked wild speculation are now part of the documented anatomy of the monument. Yet even as knowledge increases, imagination does not diminish. Instead, it shifts. If no secrets are in the visible tunnels, then perhaps they lie deeper, in cavities revealed only by instruments. Thus the story turns once again from what is known to what remains unseen. The history of tunnels and restorations within the Sphinx is a story of constant struggle against time. Sand, wind, and water have always worked against the Guardian, and humans have always fought back, cutting into its body not to discover secrets, but to keep it alive. These tunnels are less like hidden passageways and more like the arteries of preservation, channels through which generations have attempted to sustain the monument. Yet the irony remains that every attempt to repair the Sphinx has fed its mythology, transforming shafts of maintenance into symbols of mystery. When modern archaeologists study these interventions, they see evidence of evolving engineering. In the New Kingdom, masons carefully placed limestone blocks to stabilize paws that had begun to disintegrate. In Roman times, repairs became less precise, yet still essential, with patches added to prevent collapse. Medieval caretakers, unable to fully preserve the monument, left it to the sands, which ironically shielded it from further erosion by burying most of its body. In the 19th and 20th centuries, engineers introduced new methods, including cement and stone cladding, sometimes with results that clashed with the original material, but nevertheless saved the statue from ruin. The Sphinx today is thus not a pristine artifact from Khafre's age, but a layered construction, a collaboration across millennia between the original builders and countless restorers. These layers give the monument its peculiar aura. To look closely at the Sphinx is to see both antiquity and modernity fused in stone. The head, more resilient, still bears the outlines of the pharaonic headdress. The torso, by contrast, is a patchwork of ancient bedrock, New Kingdom masonry, Roman repairs, and modern cladding. The paws, often imagined as concealing doors, are in reality heavy restorations from multiple eras, each leaving seams that suggest concealment. The Guardian is not a single story, but a library of interventions, each layer a chapter in its survival. But the tunnels and restorations do more than preserve. They shape how we imagine the Sphinx. For a visitor, the sight of sealed shafts and mismatched stone blocks is not easily explained as preservation. It feels like concealment, like the visible surface of something hidden. In this sense, the practical necessities of archaeology have become inseparable from the aura of myth. The more we repair the Sphinx, the more mysterious it seems. This is the paradox that keeps it alive in the imagination. Every effort to stabilize it deepens the sense of secrecy. The Sphinx's tunnels also remind us of the fragility of even the greatest monuments. We think of pyramids and guardians as eternal, yet their endurance depends on continual human care. Without restorations, the Sphinx would long ago have collapsed into rubble. Its survival is not simply a gift from antiquity, but a testament to an unbroken chain of concern stretching across 45 centuries. Each tunnel, each patch, each block added in haste or reverence is part of that chain. They are not entrances to hidden halls, but signatures of human devotion. And yet, because these signatures take the form of tunnels and seams, they will always invite the imagination to wander. They look like passages, and passages always suggest journeys. They look like doors, and doors always suggest secrets. In this way, the reality of preservation and the dream of hidden chambers become intertwined. The Sphinx itself is the meeting point, a body that is both repaired stone and imagined gateway. With the tunnels and restorations examined, the stage is set for the next chapter of our journey. If ancient and modern hands have tunneled into the Sphinx, modern science has probed it with tools far subtler: radar, seismic surveys, and even muon imaging borrowed from particle physics. These methods have revealed anomalies beneath the guardian that reignite the mystery in new forms. Where chisels cut stone, technology now cuts through the unseen. To understand the Sphinx today, we must turn to these modern scientific probes and see what they have uncovered in their search for truth beneath the sand. The Sphinx has always been a puzzle written in stone, but in the modern age, humanity has learned to probe mysteries with tools invisible to the eye. Where ancient workers used chisels and later explorers used shovels, today we deploy radar, seismic sensors, and even cosmic particles to peer beneath its pores. This shift from excavation to non-invasive scanning has opened new frontiers of knowledge while simultaneously deepening the riddles. For if technology has confirmed cavities and anomalies within and beneath the guardian, it has not explained them. The Sphinx continues to resist full disclosure, offering tantalizing hints but no final answers. The story of scientific probing begins in earnest in the late 20th century. Seismic surveys in the 1970s and 1980s, designed to map the density of the ground beneath the monument, revealed puzzling zones where vibrations slowed or refracted unexpectedly. To the geophysicists, these anomalies suggested voids or fissures in the bedrock. Their shapes, some rectangular, immediately captured attention. Could these be natural cavities, or were they chambers carved deliberately into the limestone? Archaeologists advised caution, noting that irregularities are common in quarries, yet the word void carried its own weight. The silence beneath the paws grew louder. In the 1990s, ground-penetrating radar refined the picture. Pulses of radio waves sent into the Earth returned echoes that hinted at further irregularities, particularly beneath the Sphinx's paws and flanks. The surveys described discontinuities in the subsurface material, patterns that did not match the expected uniformity of solid limestone. Reports suggested that these anomalies could be man-made cavities. Media seized upon the findings, turning cautious technical descriptions into bold declarations of hidden chambers. The Sphinx was once again front-page news, its silent form paired with headlines about secrets buried in the sand. Archaeologists pushed back. They reminded the world that radar anomalies do not equate to hidden rooms. In limestone, natural fissures and changes in density can produce similar results. The Giza Plateau, scarred by thousands of years of quarrying, is full of cuts and cavities. Without excavation, there is no way to distinguish between natural voids, ancient quarries, or intentional chambers. Yet excavation beneath the Sphinx remains prohibited for fear of destabilizing the monument. Thus, the technology revealed anomalies, but the anomalies remained unresolved. In recent years, more advanced techniques have been brought to bear. Among the most remarkable is muon imaging, a method borrowed from particle physics. Cosmic rays constantly bombard the Earth, producing high-energy particles called muons that pass through rock. By placing detectors around a structure, scientists can map how muons scatter or are absorbed, effectively producing a radiographic image of the interior. This method has been used with striking results inside the Great Pyramid, revealing previously unknown cavities. Inspired by that success, researchers turned their gaze toward the Sphinx. The muon surveys, while less publicized than those at the pyramids, hinted at density variations beneath the Guardian's body. Once again, anomalies appeared. Some scientists spoke of possible voids, others of zones of weaker rock. The results did not reveal vast chambers, but they did confirm that the Sphinx is not as solid as it seems. Beneath the paws and along the flanks, the distribution of density suggests that cavities of some kind do exist. Whether they are natural, structural, or intentional remains unclear. The implications are profound. If the cavities are natural, they tell us about the geology of the Giza Plateau, about how water and time have shaped the limestone. If they are ancient quarries, they reveal more about the process by which the Sphinx was carved, perhaps showing how blocks were extracted for surrounding temples. If they are intentional chambers, they could hold ritual or symbolic meaning, linking the Sphinx to unseen functions in Khafre's complex. Each possibility adds a layer to our understanding. None can be dismissed outright. Yet the very limits of these methods fuel mystery. Instruments can detect anomalies, but they cannot open them. Without excavation, the nature of the voids remains unknown. This liminal state, where we know something is there but cannot confirm what creates the perfect space for myth. To a scientist, the data shows density variations. To a dreamer, it shows hidden rooms filled with scrolls of ancient wisdom. The same anomaly becomes evidence for two entirely different narratives. The Sphinx, silent as always, allows both. The broader context of modern probes also reminds us how technology changes our relationship with monuments. Where once we would have dug and risked destruction, we now peer with invisible eyes, unwilling to disturb what we hope to preserve. This restraint is admirable, yet it also ensures that mysteries endure. We choose to know less in order to save more. The Sphinx survives intact, but at the cost of remaining enigmatic. In a sense, the monument itself enforces its riddle, demanding preservation over revelation. As technology advances further, new methods may sharpen the picture. More sensitive muon detectors, improved radar, and refined seismic imaging could one day provide a three-dimensional map of what lies beneath. But even then, ambiguity may remain. Data can reveal shapes, but not purposes. A cavity may be natural or human. A void may be a quarry or a chamber. The Sphinx may always keep the crucial detail to itself. This tension between science and mystery is what makes the Sphinx timeless. Every new tool confirms that something unusual lies beneath, yet none can say exactly what. The Guardian remains inscrutable, allowing science to glimpse its secrets without surrendering them fully. And perhaps that is fitting, for the Sphinx was never meant to be transparent. It was built to embody enigma, to guard thresholds, to inspire awe. Modern science, with all its probes, finds itself in the same position as ancient pilgrims standing before the Guardian, asking questions, receiving silence. And so, as we close this chapter, the truth of the Sphinx remains suspended between data and dream. Cavities are confirmed, their nature unknown. Anomalies are mapped, their meaning uncertain. The Sphinx has revealed enough to keep us searching, but not enough to satisfy. It has accepted our probes, yet preserved its riddle, and in that balance lies its power. The next chapter must ask the question that naturally follows. If something lies beneath, what could it be? Are we dealing with natural fissures, abandoned quarries, or something more deliberate? Theories abound, and while evidence favors caution, imagination ranges far. The Sphinx invites us to speculate, to ask not only what science has found, but what it might mean. The Sphinx crouches on the Giza Plateau as both monument and threshold, its colossal body carved from bedrock yet whispering of spaces beneath. Modern science has confirmed that cavities and anomalies exist, but it has not revealed their nature. And so the question arises, one that has lingered for decades and refuses to die. What could be hidden below the paws of the Sphinx? The sober answer begins with geology. The plateau itself is riddled with fissures formed by water, shifts in the earth, and the quarrying that shaped the pyramids and temples. Many of the voids detected by seismic and radar surveys could simply be natural weaknesses in the stone. Such fissures would not be unusual. The layers of limestone at Giza vary in hardness, with softer sections prone to erosion. Over thousands of years, water seeping through these strata may have left cavities that now register as anomalies. If this is the case, then what lies beneath the Sphinx is not treasure, but the history of the Earth itself, written in the language of geology. Another possibility is that the cavities are remnants of ancient quarrying. The Sphinx was carved directly out of bedrock, leaving behind a trench around its body. Blocks removed from this trench were used to build Khafre's Valley Temple and other structures. It is conceivable that some quarrying extended beneath the paws, creating shallow pits or cuts that were later filled or abandoned. To modern instruments, these would appear as voids, rectangular and artificial in shape, yet their purpose would have been purely practical. If so, the voids are not chambers of mystery, but scars of construction, silent witnesses to the labor of thousands of workers shaping the plateau in Khafre's time. Yet there remains the possibility, however slim, that some of the anomalies represent deliberate chambers. Ancient Egyptians built subterranean spaces for many purposes: tombs, storage rooms, ritual passages, and symbolic gateways. The temples of the Giza Plateau are connected by causeways and shafts, their architecture intertwined with both function and symbolism. It is not inconceivable that the Sphinx, as the guardian of the necropolis, might conceal a chamber cut beneath its body for ritual use. Such a space would not contain lost libraries or treasures of Atlantis, but it might have served as a sanctuary, a symbolic passage between worlds, or a repository for ritual objects. The temptation to imagine more is powerful. Popular imagination fills the voids with scrolls of wisdom, artifacts from vanished civilizations, or even evidence of global cataclysms. These visions are not supported by archaeology, yet they thrive precisely because the anomalies are unexplored. The Sphinx's silence creates a canvas upon which every dream can be painted. The Hall of Records, the Atlantean Archive, the Library of Lost Humanity, all are projections of human longing for a hidden inheritance. We want the Sphinx to conceal something, because we want history itself to be deeper than we know. But archaeology urges caution. Excavations around the Sphinx have revealed nothing to suggest vast libraries or hidden treasure. The Egyptians recorded their wisdom on temple walls, in papyrus scrolls, and in tombs, not in secret chambers beneath statues. The absence of inscriptions linking the Sphinx to concealed knowledge is telling. The monument was revered as a guardian, not a vault. Its symbolic role was to embody power and divine protection, not to serve as a container of secrets. In this light, the anomalies beneath it are more likely geological or practical than mystical. Yet even the cautious possibilities are compelling. If the cavities are natural fissures, they tell us of the ancient climate, of rains that once fell on the Sahara, of waters that seeped into the limestone before the desert took hold. If they are quarries, they tell us of the engineering genius of the Old Kingdom, of how stone was extracted and shaped into temples. If they are ritual chambers, they tell us of Egyptian spirituality, of the ways in which architecture embodied cosmic order. In every case, what lies beneath enriches the story of the Sphinx, even if it does not fulfill the myths. The greatest secret the Sphinx holds may not be what lies in its cavities, but why we continue to dream of them. The anomalies beneath the paws have become mirrors of our desires. Scientists see puzzles of geology and engineering. Mystics see vaults of forgotten wisdom. The Sphinx itself remains indifferent, its gaze fixed on the horizon, as if to remind us that the truth may be less about hidden chambers and more about the persistence of mystery itself. To imagine what lies below is to confront the limits of our knowledge. Science can probe and measure, but until excavation is permitted, the cavities will remain ambiguous. Legends can fill the silence, but without evidence, they remain stories. Between them lies the enduring power of the Sphinx. It holds us in suspension, reminding us that not all questions can be answered, and that sometimes the greatest treasure is the mystery itself. As we leave the realm of speculation, we turn to the heart of the matter. The Sphinx may or may not conceal chambers, but what it undeniably holds is a legacy. It has endured for more than 4 millennia as a symbol of kingship, guardianship, and divine authority. Its true secret may not be beneath its paws, but in the meaning it has carried across ages. To uncover that legacy is to see why the Sphinx matters, not as a vault of hidden libraries, but as one of the most enduring symbols of human civilization. The Sphinx has been called many things across history: guardian, riddle, monument, oracle, ruin. Legends tell us it hides chambers, myths say it guards libraries, science tells us it is scarred by rain and sand. But beyond these debates, there remains a truth that is more enduring and more profound. The Sphinx's greatest secret is not buried beneath its paws or etched into its weathered flanks. It is the legacy it carries as a symbol of kingship, divine guardianship, and the eternal human need to place meaning into stone. From its very creation in the Old Kingdom, the Sphinx embodied power. Khafre, whose pyramid rises behind it, sought more than a tomb. He sought to anchor his reign in eternity. The Sphinx, carved with his likeness, was not merely a statue, but a cosmic statement. Its lion body symbolized strength, its human face wisdom, and its alignment with the rising sun declared its role as mediator between king and cosmos. To stand before it in Khafre's time was to see the earthly ruler fused with divine authority, his gaze eternal, his guardianship unbroken. The Sphinx was less an object of worship than a symbol of kingship itself, proclaiming that the pharaoh was not only ruler of Egypt, but participant in the order of the universe. This role persisted even as dynasties rose and fell. By the New Kingdom, when the sands had already begun to bury the body, the Sphinx was revered as a living god. Thutmose IV, who cleared the sands from its flanks, recorded his vision on the dream stele. In his dream, the Sphinx promised him kingship if he restored it. Here the guardian became an oracle, a divine being whose voice could shape the destiny of a ruler. The stele still stands between the paws, a reminder that the Sphinx was not simply a relic of the past, but an active force in Egyptian religion and politics. Even in later periods, when Egypt came under Greek and Roman rule, the Sphinx retained its aura. It was incorporated into broader traditions, seen by foreigners as a symbol of mystery and riddles. In the medieval period, Arab chroniclers described it as a wonder of the ancients, a monument whose meaning had been partly forgotten yet whose power remained undeniable. Across cultures and centuries, the Sphinx never became merely stone. It remained a living symbol, a point of contact between humanity and something greater. Its legacy also lies in the way it has inspired imagination. The Greeks saw in it the riddle of Thebes, a creature whose question challenged humanity's understanding of itself. European travelers in the Renaissance marveled at it as a relic of biblical times. Modern seekers project onto it visions of lost civilizations. The Sphinx has served as a mirror for every culture that gazed upon it, reflecting back their fears, hopes, and questions. It embodies not one meaning but many, each layered upon the other, making it inexhaustible. At the same time, the Sphinx's legacy is rooted in resilience. Few monuments have endured so much. It has been buried by sand for centuries, excavated and reburied, patched and restored countless times. Its nose and beard were broken away. Its body has cracked and crumbled, and yet it remains, recognizable, powerful, impossible to ignore. That endurance is itself a legacy, a statement that human meaning carved into stone can survive the collapse of kingdoms and the erosion of time. The Sphinx is not eternal in the literal sense, but it has endured long enough to feel eternal. Perhaps most importantly, the Sphinx represents the human impulse to create symbols larger than ourselves. It was never meant to be practical. It is not a tomb, nor a storehouse, nor a fortress. It is pure meaning in stone, a fusion of lion and king, a proclamation carved into the desert. That is why it still matters. It reminds us that civilizations are not remembered only by their tools or their wars, but by their symbols, by the images they choose to carve into eternity. The Sphinx is Egypt's eternal image of power and guardianship, the silent face turned toward the horizon to watch as time flows by. In this way, the The real legacy of the Sphinx is not what it hides, but what it reveals about humanity. It shows that we are a species driven to leave marks greater than ourselves, to carve meaning into the earth, to guard our dead with symbols of strength, to reach for the divine with stone. The Sphinx has outlasted the language of its builders, the empires of its kings, and even the climate of the Sahara. What remains is its presence, its symbolism, its ability to inspire awe. And so, while debates about erosion and hidden chambers will continue, they are not the heart of the story. The true legacy is that the Sphinx embodies the fusion of power, faith, and imagination. It has stood as protector of the Giza plateau, as oracle of kingship, as marvel of travelers, and as riddle of humanity. It reminds us that mystery itself is part of meaning, that what is not answered can be as powerful as what island. As we approach the final chapter of this journey, we return to where we began with the Sphinx as both enigma and revelation. The Guardian has survived millennia, not because it holds treasure beneath, but because it holds within itself the perfect balance of myth and reality. Its real secret is not gold or scrolls, but the enduring power of mystery, and that, perhaps, is the greatest treasure of all. The Sphinx is more than a monument. It is a dialogue between stone and imagination, between fact and myth, between what science uncovers and what mystery preserves. Across these chapters we have followed its story, the carving from bedrock during Khafre's reign, the geological debates about water and wind, the anomalies detected beneath its paws, the legends of hidden libraries, the real tunnels of repair, and the scans of modern science. Each step has added knowledge, yet none has erased the mystery. The Sphinx endures as a riddle not because we know nothing, but because every discovery deepens the paradox. Science has shown us that the Sphinx is not an ageless survivor of Atlantis, but a creation of the Old Kingdom, carved by human hands more than 4,500 years ago. Archaeology has revealed its role as guardian of Khafre's necropolis, linked to pyramid, causeway, and temple. Geology has taught us how wind and rain shaped its body, leaving scars that became the seed of debates about its age. Seismic surveys, radar, and muon imaging have revealed voids and anomalies beneath its body, but none that can be definitively called chambers. Excavation has been cautious, preservation prioritized, and so the Guardian remains enigmatic, half revealed by science, yet still clothed in silence. Myth, on the other hand, has refused to yield. The Hall of Records, the riddle of the Greeks, the sealed doors of medieval chroniclers, the visions of Edgar Cayce, all have attached themselves to the Sphinx, creating a mythology as enduring as the stone itself. These myths cannot be excavated or disproven with instruments, because they exist in the imagination. They thrive in the gaps of knowledge, in the spaces where science cannot yet speak. Where instruments detect an anomaly, myth supplies a hidden library. Where cracks are filled with blocks, legend supplies a sealed doorway. The very limits of science become fuel for myth. And yet, the relationship between myth and science is not adversarial. It is symbiotic. Myths keep interest alive, drawing the world's gaze to the Sphinx. Science tempers imagination with evidence, clarifying what is plausible and what is not. Between them, the Sphinx continues to matter. If it were only science, the Sphinx might be reduced to data. If it were only myth, it might drift into fantasy. But held between the two, it remains a living riddle, captivating both scholars and dreamers. The real secret of the Sphinx may be this balance. It shows us how humanity approaches the unknown, with measurement and with story, with instruments and with dreams. It reminds us that mystery has value, that unanswered questions sustain wonder. The Sphinx does not need to yield its every secret to remain powerful. In fact, its power lies precisely in what it withholds. We know enough to marvel at its creation, but not enough to silence the imagination. The Sphinx guards not only the plateau, but the boundary between knowledge and mystery. Consider the gaze of the Sphinx, fixed eastward toward the rising Sunday. Each morning for thousands of years, its face has greeted the dawn. That gaze embodies continuity, endurance, and hope. It tells us that civilizations rise and fall, sands bury and uncover, Myths grow and fade, but meaning endures. The Sphinx's silence is not emptiness. It is invitation. It asks us to question, to imagine, to search. It does not surrender answers easily, for answers end the quest. It prefers to remain enigmatic, because the journey toward understanding is itself the treasure. And so we arrive at the end of our exploration. The Sphinx has given us construction and erosion, tunnels and anomalies, myths and restorations, science and silence. Its secrets are not golden treasure or hidden scrolls, but something greater, a window into the human soul. It reveals how we carve power into stone, how we weave myths into silence, how we seek meaning in riddles. The Sphinx is not only Egypt's guardian but humanity's mirror. In its weathered face we see our own longing for eternity, our own struggle between science and imagination, our own search for truth in the desert of time. The riddle of the Sphinx has no final answer. But perhaps that is the point. The secret beneath its paws is not a chamber, but a truth, that mystery itself is sacred, and that in seeking it we find ourselves. The Guardian has watched 4.5 millennia pass beneath its gaze. It will likely watch many more. And in every age, it will continue to whisper the same eternal invitation, to look, to wonder, and to remember that in mystery lies meaning.